Good morning, everybody. I hope this video finds you well. Today I want to begin a long series of discussions on how to conduct world-line travel via stargates. And fundamental to this method of travel is the understanding of what the universe is. I can show you how to make this contraption or make that contraption and this device or that device. But if you don't understand the technology that it's based upon, you will be unable to use it. Which is why I talk a lot about the MWI and quantum physics. Now, the way I describe it is very simple. If you've been watching my videos and reading what I have to say, you're going to say, of course, it makes a lot of sense. It is very simple. It really is very, very simple, but the simple is often clouded with the arcane. A lot of people make money and discuss aspects of this using language and descriptions and descriptors that are foreign to most people. Suppose you're a butcher or a baker, and every morning you get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and you do your work. You work the entire day and then you come home and you're dealing with other issues. You don't really have the time to worry about the Everett conjecture or the Everett multi-world theories. So I'm just going to simplify things, okay? The mathematics behind all this is actually very interesting, and I have no fault behind the mathematics of it. What people have a problem with is that you're looking at one thing, but you're looking at it from another angle. And a lot of people are uncomfortable with that. We say that by looking at things in this way, we understand atoms and we understand compounds, and thus we understand chemistry, and therefore we can make concoctions and recipes from this knowledge, and therefore that way works, so let's just stick with that way. And the point that Everett, and the point that I make always, is there's different ways and different mechanisms that you can use to describe a system. And the Everett has devised a couple of ways, and basically they're very accurate ways, but there's no immediate application using contemporaneous technology. That's not to say that it isn't being done or used. The systems that I was involved in, that was back in 1981, and they were pretty mature. So I know that this system works, and I know how it works, and I know why it works, and I'm going to try to explain to you guys exactly that. Most viewers and readers should be under the understanding, the crisp, clear, and cool understanding, that everything that we see in the physical world is made up of smaller parts. We call those things atoms. And atoms, of course, are made up of even smaller things known as particles. Perhaps you've heard of some of these particles, like the electron, like the protons and neutrons. These are smaller particles that make up atoms. And in the world of quantum physics, we go to the smaller parts that make up those things, which enter into the realm of brains, string theory, and other such idealization of thoughts. And in all those ideas, the mathematics differ depending upon your conjecture and things, but it's all based upon the same idea, which is that these tiny idealized quanta are but strings that are vibrating, or things that are vibrating. And I've illustrated that before. I said that you can take these vibrating things, whether they're strings or brains or whatever, and they're vibrating, and you can put them together in different ways. We idealize it because we think in terms of the physical world, but we can put them together in these ways, and they form templates of commonality, which we then refer to as neutrons and protons and everything, the basic building blocks of everything. And I, of course, say that this thing can be represented by a ball, and I then say that these balls can then be represented as a cluster of balls, and so on and so forth. The important thing to remember is that they're all vibrating. All those little balls are vibrating. All those little lines, those little Lego blocks, they're all vibrating. And thus you can look at the entire system as well as the components as just things that are vibrating. And this vibration is observed by our senses as something physically solid, but it's actually not. Our senses say that this is a solid cup of coffee with liquid inside. That's what our senses say. But in reality, it's just a whole bunch of quanta all vibrating. Now, there is nothing here that I have said that goes against anything that is accepted in the worlds of physics or in quantum physics. There is nothing that I have said that goes against these things. Okay? Now, Everett has some very, very interesting equations. You, Everett, by the way. And most of the readership isn't a mathematical wonk like myself. You'll look at these squiggly lines and equations and go, blink. But they're really not that hard to understand once you get into it. They're actually pretty elegant, and they form a complete picture of the reality of things that vibrate. It's a nice transition from things that vibrate to how we perceive it. And if you look at the mechanism, it's very clear. For instance, color. Color is a frequency. And we see it as color because the eyes pick up that frequency and transmit it as color through our synapses. So everything's a frequency. Everything's a frequency. Now, Everett made the multi-world theory, they call it the theory. But basically, there's no problem with this idea that everything is a vibration. In fact, if you go through the New Age writings, they're always talking about frequency, 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 frequency. I've had a couple of people who visited MM and tried to tell me they want to talk to me about frequencies. I'm like, what do you want to talk to me about frequencies? You want to talk about damping frequencies? Do you want to talk about compound frequencies? Do you want to talk, because I studied the engineering applications of using frequencies, so I'm pretty well versed in it, okay? So you got these people and they go, oh, it's an aha moment, it's frequencies. Okay, fine. Great. Now what? How are you going to use it? Is it just an aha moment that you realize, or are you going to actually use this idea? So, let's talk a little bit about this. Now, Everett, in his world line writings, described a very simplistic model that seems to cover everything. You can't find any fault in it. And what it is the equations of, I'm going to simplify it here, okay? The equations of the universe show that you can have multiple universes simultaneously from the now. The mathematics is pristine. It's not just clear, it's crystal clear, it's pristine. And then when you compound that with the crystal clear clarity of everything being frequency, and you put those two together, you have something that's quite astounding. And it describes the world that is not the world you see, but the world of infinite possibilities. Okay, there's a movie called What the Bleep Do We Know? And in that movie, they try to talk about quantum physics as it applies to the world. They talk about thought and intention and all kinds of stuff. And I recommend that movie entirely. And I won't include portions of it here because it'll probably be banned for copyright violations, so I'm not going to do that. But the name of the book or the name of the book and the movie, but you want to see the movie. It's free on the internet, by the way. It's called What the Bleep? B-L-E-E-P. Bleep. What the bleep do we know? Question mark. That's the name of the movie. And they describe quantum physics in terms that most people can understand. But I'm not going to go through that. I'm just going to explain that everything is a vibrating frequency. And as you put things together, you have compound frequencies or suppressed frequencies. That's like a frequency signature. Those of you who are ham radio enthusiasts will understand tuning and how you can tune onto certain frequencies. You'll also understand harmonics. So if everything, now here's the idea and the understanding. If everything is a complex series of frequencies, then you can take a frequency snapshot of a physical region or physical point in time, a region within a physical point in time, listing all the frequencies together within a region at a specific point in time. And that snapshot, just like you take a picture of a camera, can be replicated And the mechanism for traversing using stargates says if you have a snapshot of where you are at the moment, then you remove the frequencies of yourself in that snapshot. And then you have a snapshot of another region where you have removed yourself from that. You then have a stargate. You can move in this area that you have a snapshot of. You then take that snapshot and electronically tweak it to the destination snapshot, and boom, you're right there. That's how it works. And it's a little tricky, and in this series, I'm going to describe how you actually do that. In effect, it's not that difficult, but it needs to be precise, because you don't want to end up going into a portal and suddenly have a hand growing out of your forehead or something, right? That'd be pretty disconcerting, huh? Now, the technology, of course, is not that, in theory, isn't that complex. In application, the engineering hurdles are not unobtainable. It's just that it's you need to have precise measurement of things. So what you do is you can use there's all kinds of vibrations moving about, but it turns out that the most stable measurements that you can make at the point of time, we're going to call it the egress or exit stargate, for lack of a better word. You can call it a teleporter, a transporter, a stargate, a siren mirror, whatever, this realm that you enter. And the first thing that you must understand in it is that you have to take precise measurements of all the frequencies. And the way that is accomplished is you take gravity readings. The more gravity readings you take, the more precise your measurements are. So you take very, very precise gravity measurements. Okay? So you take it of an empty chamber, of an empty device, an empty region. So in this case, let's consider a region of space that is approximately 1 yard or 1 meter in diameter as a cylinder going up approximately 3 yards or 9 feet high. So you walk into this little cylinder, and this is your region. This is your region that you will measure. I argue that at a minimum you should have 6 gravity sensors. Now these things are a very sensitive device known as I keep on thinking of flux capacitors. That's a science fiction term. It's flux gate. Flux gate. It's a technology for measuring gravity and geomagnetic alterations, and they're very, very sensitive. And the more flex gates that you have around your egress portal, the more accurate your readings will be, and you want a very, very accurate reading. And they will create reams and reams and reams and reams of data. And you can use various algorithms to convert that data into something that you can visualize. And in my writings, I list, 10 different techniques you can use to do that. But basically, you want a image representation, and they'll generate an image. And you'll see what is in effect a three-dimensional gravity reading of the portal area. And then you take one as you enter. Okay? So as you're taking this gravity reading, you're going to see this moving blob enter this region that's fixed. It'll be a blob. It'll be a moving blob. The next step you want to do is you want to, using algorithms, erase your blob. Okay? So you have to precisely determine what that moving blob is. If you can imagine yourself, what we physically see represented as an algorithm blob as determined by the sensors. So you want to then erase that. Okay? That's easy enough to do. The trick is the precision. These algorithms are very, very good, and you can absolutely see, as I showed in my writings, you can determine what is the fixed portal, what is the fixed egress platform, the 1 meter by 9 feet high tube that you enter, and then you subtract that. Now, what you can do now, so that's your egress location. Now, let's suppose that at the same time, you do the same thing in Hamburg, Germany, for a egress portal there. And you take these measurements. It's just a spot on the floor in the laboratory that you take tape and you put on the floor. You say, we're just going to read this area, and you surround it by, a minimum of 6, but I'm going to say 16 to 25 of these flux gates. And you're measuring what's going on inside there, and all this and all that. And now you have this data. Okay. So you have data of what you're doing as you're entering in. You have data of what you're entering into. You also have data of your destination area. By changing the gravitational reading, the apparent gravitational reading of that area, you create a portal. So stop thinking in terms of this tunneling out of the physical into something else. Forget that nonsense. Well, I'm not going to call it nonsense. Just forget that for now, because that's not the technique that you use. You find the resonance pattern of the frequencies at egress and the resonance pattern of where you want to go to, and then you switch them out in one physical location. You just switch them out and swap them out, and you're going to say, okay, I understand that. How do you do that? And that's the technique, isn't it? Now, the way to do this is core. The way it was done at NASC Pensacola was that you create a magnetic field, a very, very strong magnetic field. A very, very highly charged magnetic field, electromagnetic field, and you walk into it. think of it in terms of washing away that's so heavily charged that the gravitational vibrations are overwhelmed by it. And you walk into this highly charged bath, into the magnetic lines of flux. Okay? And then you switch them over. So you're entering in, and then while you're in the middle of the massive magnetic field and you're turning it off, you have the destination coordinates mapped out. This is the process. Now, there's some issues. The way it was done over in the Navy and how it's done here is that it's cyclic. You use a sign, it gradually builds as you're walking in, it reaches a point of physical intensity, and you swap it out there, and then you move out. That's what makes the weird sound when you're walking in, this feeling like this big stone grinding mill. That's what makes that sound. And that's what gives the feeling of vibration as well. Now, it has to be absolutely precise. I discussed about using this teleportation unit to keep you intact and just describe another region and another physical geographic location. But you, if you are mapping how the geographic fluxgate sensors change over time, you can then project what it would be like in the future or in the past. So you thus have a time machine. You enter this and you can suddenly depart at another time. Of course, you're stuck there unless you have another portal, but it will teleport you to another place anywhere in the universe, provided you have the proper coordinates at any point in time, provided you have the proper units. But it's more than that. You can alter the profile of who you are inside. Now, this takes more work, but I'm just saying in theory, you can alter that and use that to change you. Give you an extra hand, perhaps. Change the color of your skin. Add some wings. You can do all sorts of things. That's how it works. So it's a device that acts just like a teleporter from Star Trek. In future videos, I will go into the details of how to do this stuff and the mathematics behind all of it, as well as the construction techniques to create your own if you're going to be so adventurous. Personally, I think the best thing to do if you want to alter your reality is provide template world line switches, change your template, and do that through control of your thoughts, because after all, thoughts operate on frequencies. It's worked okay for many people, worked okay for me. But if you want to have a Star Trek moment and teleport to some other location, this is how you do it. The good news is that the technologies are not restricted. Nobody's going to come knocking on your door because, you've got 17 tons of fertilizer or anything like that. You can buy these flux gate sensors off the market. They're a little pricey, but they're not exorbitantly so. Creation of a magnetic field is going to cost you some money. There's different ways of doing it, but you can get a little tiny magnetic field. That's no problem if you want to teleport ants. But if you want to teleport a human-sized person through a portal, yeah, that's going to cost some money, because you got to make this big thing, and it's the size of a house. Okay, you're going to have to make this big magnetic, electromagnetic magnet you're going to walk into the flux gate. So that's going to require some money. But aside from that, that's all it takes. Now, the issue isn't building one of these things. That's mature technology. The issue isn't getting the flux gate sensor. That's mature technology. The issue isn't generating the algorithms to visualize the before and the after. That's no problem either. The problem, the big issue for anybody doing so, is calibration. You have to precisely calibrate. And so you'll discover that it's very forgiving as you walk into this. When it reaches peak energy flux, peak magnetic flux, it's very forgiving. You can be off a couple of fraction of a seconds and you're walking through. It's very, very forgiving that way. So that's the good thing. The part that's not so good is that if you accidentally make a mistake in your destination coordinates, anything's possible. You might be sent 1 billion years in the future. You may end up having an extra leg. Anything's possible. And understanding that this exists and that we're all moments in time explains the reality of every frozen moment is a different world line, and you can change those world lines. There's a lot of very highly paid people that don't even understand this basic stuff. Just like people on the news saying all kinds of bullshit. They're getting paid multi-million dollars. What the hell? Jesus. Anyways, that's how it works. That's the overview of the system. And I'll start giving construction techniques for those of you who want to know how to make one of these devices. As I said before, it's not difficult to make. And if you have some money, it's not really even that expensive to make. But calibration has to be very, very particular. And you need to run some trials to calibrate it. And that's the issue, because when you're dealing with an organic body moving into this kind of contraption, you could have all kinds of problems if things go wrong. Okay, that's this introductory segment on Basics Teleportation 101 and how it works. I don't want to bore you too much with equations. The equations are very, very elegant. And I'll continue talking on the subject at another time. For now, just remember that whatever you do, however you act, be the best you could possibly be, because, well,
我越过直到平静。I can breathe, I can breathe, I can breathe， 拖着直到丧失清醒。